All right, why don't we get started? It is Monday, October 17th, 2022, 7:30 p.m. I call this meeting of the Needham Design Review Board to order. I am the board chair, Mark Lusing. I'd like to confirm that members and applicants are present and can hear us ourselves, everyone. So members, when I call your name, please respond. Bob Dermody.
Here.
Deborah Robinson.
Here.
I don't see Susan, so maybe she'll catch up. Also attending our town staff, Elisa Lichman and Kristen Patinode. Close enough?
Very good. Yeah, thank you.
Applicants, if one of the members of the team could respond. 377 Chestnut Street, Roche Brothers.
Yes, Chuck Bromley, Plan B Retail Design.
Okay.
And Jim Sperber here from Roche Brothers.
Okay, welcome back. We have a continued item, 140 Kendrick Street site plan review for their solar array.
Rick D'Angelis from Boston Properties
Okay,
and Marcel Rogers from Sunwealth, a designer of the solar canopy system.
okay, thank you. And 9B Street, Coca-Cola site plan review.
Yes, Evans Huber on behalf of the applicant, and I can see our team members are.
Hanging around the edge. Okay, thank you. Welcome to this open meeting of the Needham Design Review Board, which is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, and its extensions due to the state of emergency due to the outbreak of COVID-19. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, the Needham Design Review Board is convening by Zoom app as posted on the town's website, the Design Review Board page, identifying how the public may join. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. There is a special permit application tonight for which we will seek public input. All supporting materials that have been provided for the members of this board are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. Please note that other people may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer unless the chair approves. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. I would like to review the remote procedures for tonight's meeting. I will introduce each applicant on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will take comments or questions from Design Review Board members. After discussion, each vote will be by roll call vote. A copy of your application, stamped and noted for the type of approval that it receives, will be emailed to you by the applicant. Will be emailed to you by the DRB support staff, and then you can attach that to your building permit application. So we'll start with the first item on the agenda. This is a public hearing for Roche Brothers applying for a special permit for signage. So why don't we did have a preview of this at a previous meeting, and we offered some comments on the signage. Some adjustments were made, which were noted in the new application. So I will turn it back over to Roche Brothers, and you can sort of take us through your application, and then we'll discuss it and make a determination.
Okay. Do you need the screen share on it, or does everyone have the?
It's helpful if you can point out the items you're talking about, actually. So go ahead if you can.
Get that up there. That didn't work.
Oh, that's okay. Go ahead and just take us through. We all have it.
All right. When we were before you last, it was for the design board review for the facade, which was approved. On that, we had shown signage that we were looking to get approved, and it was sent back with comments because of a number of reasons, and we've reacted to each one of those comments. I think starting off the main building sign on the facade, which we'll refer to as sign A, was submitted as 71.25 square feet. We're resubmitting that at a reduced size of 57.8 square feet as per what was suggested by the board. We also centered that into the facade panel, which again was suggested by the board. Sign B was really the Chestnut Street below that, coming out proud on the edge of the canopy, let's say, or rising up from the canopy, which was submitted originally as 17.5 square feet. We've reduced that from a 14-inch letter text to a 12-inch, and that was bringing it down to 12.1 square feet, reduced as was suggested. And the same way on the side where we're just identifying, I'm not sure this is really a sign or a directional, but we do have identified the redemption on the side. Originally, that was 13.42 square feet, and we've reduced that down again, the 14-inch to the 12-inch, and that was reduced down to 9.1 square feet. It was, it seemed to be acceptable to have the 64 square feet, which is a stencil type text painted on the brick on the far right side of the store. And there was a second one shown on the parking lot side. The one on the front seemed to be in agreement with the board. The one on the side, there was some question as to it being needed. We've taken that advice and have actually deleted and eliminated that sign. So what we are looking for is to approve 4 signs in this regard versus the original 5, and the 3 of the 4 are reduced in size. The only other thing that was added to the sign was the numerical 377, which is in the glazing right below the right above the entrance door of the front.
Okay, thank you. I think you guys will recall, though, those who were in attendance will recall, we did make those comments. The 2 canopy mounted signs that we'll discuss, the Chestnut Street one, we talked about making that the address. They did say that that is actually sort of an identifier because they're going to have another Roche Brothers in town. They're going to change Sudbury Farms name. And so that's kind of an identification of the store more than it is an indication of the address. And the fact that I think they've added the number at the door was part of our suggestion. So I will open it up for the board to discuss. Deb, do you have any questions or comments?
And I was trying to remember what the last one looked like, and I don't remember exactly, but the one that's over the door, that's one they're calling sign A. It has the background to that looks like, you know, sort of oversized, almost concrete block that's much bigger than the scale of the brick. Is that? What's that?
It is a
material?
limestone stone application, and it is light in color versus the brick, contrasting that. So it does create the signboard, and it is an oversized facade. If I want to take it, I want to say it's probably 8 by 18.
Yeah, it has the dimensions on it here. I just, you know, maybe it's the graphic here, but where you're seeing the lines, but in reality, if the joints are the same color as the stone, that pattern that looks like concrete block to me won't be as big, and it would be, right? Is that the intent?
Yes, yeah, it is creating a sign panel, if you might. And it is a limestone, not a concrete block. So it's an Ariscraft product as the manufacturer of that.
Right, but you know what I'm saying about just the color of the joints really just is.
The grout color will match the
Match.
block.
And the one that I guess is called D1, the one over on the right side of the storefront elevation.
Yes.
That's on the brick, so it's just the black line work. That's paint.
Correct, and it is stencil type text, which means it's not rigid lines. It's more or less just a fading, almost like a chalk line, let's say. So it's rather subdued.
Is that intentionally not quite centered on that wall?
Yes,
Because to me, that just looks like it's like a tiny bit off center in a way that looks wrong, as opposed to being sort of balanced off center or being center. I don't know what
I
anybody
think
else.
the reason was the canopy, the weather protection canopy extends a little bit into that brick. So therefore, we were offsetting for that
The canopy,
of the main building itself. It doesn't go all the way to the end of the building. It ends at the glazing and extends a little bit into the brick.
okay, I guess I'm not seeing that.
Like, what does a little bit mean? 6 inches or 5 feet?
Yes, no, about 6 inches over.
So are we seeing that in this graphic or?
Not really. There's sort of a line work there, Deborah, but it's not white, so it's hard to tell.
Yeah, it is difficult on just a flat elevation. You're correct.
I don't know, I guess regardless, I just, based on what I'm seeing, I just, it seems like the graphic is just either wants to be centered or wants to be a little bit more offset and a little bit more balanced by something that sticks in.
I can agree to make that dead center if that's
Yeah.
Well, let's wait and see what the rest of the comments are.
okay.
So, but yeah, no, appreciate that you changed the scale of the other ones.
I think we did respond to all the comments that were made.
Okay,
All right, Susan? Yeah,
I have no additional comments.
okay, Bob?
Yes, thank you. I concur with my colleague Deborah. I think it should be centered, especially if the overlap of this awning, which doesn't appear on the rendering as we see it, is as small as you say it is. I think this is a much bigger element, so I think it should be centered. And then otherwise, I think these look good. And how many of the other three, the Redemption, Chestnut Street, and the big Roach Brothers sign over the main door, are illuminated?
The Roach Brothers and the logo over the main door are internally illuminated. All the other signs are non-illuminated.
Okay, thank you. And then that sign panel that's the limestone, is that in the same plane as the brick around it, or is it set back at all?
It sets back. I believe it's about a 3-inch reveal.
Okay,
And the brick, it's hard to see on a flat elevation, but the frame around the block actually protrudes out proud of the main brick face. And that's only a course of about a 1/2 inch.
okay,
So that
Oh,
comes
makes sense.
forward and then the limestone sets back in. I believe it's about 2 inches in, 2 to 3
All right.
inches.
all right, so that will really define that space, and that is sign A, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. 5 inches. Okay, yeah, I have no other questions at this time, Mark.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the public? If you want to raise your hand, we can bring you in if anybody's there. I see we have 19 attendants and I only have 18 on the 18 boxes here. So I just wondered if someone had something to say. Okay. Yeah, I think we appreciate the reduction in size of the illuminated sign. I think that sits better. It was a little crowded in that stone sign panel last time, so that's an improvement. I guess I would ask the other members if they have any issues with the Redemption. I mean, I think we've talked about the fact that that's not actually a door for the Redemption there. It just sort of identifies that they're using it to say that they do have Redemption in there, but you're going to use the main front entrance and go off to the left and use the cans.
There is a door going directly in under that sign.
Oh, there is. Okay.
Yeah.
You go in there, you can deposit your bottles in machine,
Okay. Okay.
and then you can continue into the store, or you can go around and come directly in the front door.
All right, I'm sorry I missed that. I'm seeing that now that that's identified as an opening. Door opening. Okay. All right, so I would agree that if we either need to move the R off center or center it, and if they're comfortable centering it, we could make a condition of that. So are there any other questions, comments?
No, I think it looks good.
All right, so I would take a motion to approve all the signs with the condition that sign D1 be centered on that brick facade section.
I'll make that motion, Mark.
Second,
Okay, we come to the vote. Bob Dermody,
Yes.
Susan Opton,
Yes,
Deborah Robinson,
yes.
and the chair approves. All right, thank you.
Thanks very much. We appreciate the board's input. We like a unanimous decision too. Thanks again.
We
Thank
strive
you.
for that, actually, so. Okay, the next applicant is the continuation for 140 Kendrick Street, which was the installation of a solar garage roof. And I was not at that meeting when they first had it, so I'm going to turn it over to Bob, who did share that meeting, and we can continue. They did give us some additional information that we had asked for, some other photos, an explanation of the location on the ground and the lighting of the garage deck below the solar array. So I would turn it over to Boston Properties, and you guys can take us through the changes and the additional information.
Can't hear you, Rick.
How's that?
Much better.
Good.
Good. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to appear before you again. With me, I'm Rick DeAngelis. I'm a Senior Vice President and Counsel at Boston Properties. Also from Boston Properties is Ben Myers, who is our Director of Sustainability. Jonathan Abe, who is a Principal of Sunwealth, our solar canopy partner, I guess is a good way to describe Sunwealth's involvement. And Marcel Rogers, also from Sunwealth, and Marcel is our Chief Designer. Somewhere here, I see somebody from VHB. I had thought that Nick Scully, our civil engineer, would be here. And I don't know if Chris Nowak is here for something else or is pinch hitting for Nick. But if he's pinch hitting for Nick, he's with us. And if he's not, then he's probably still a good guy.
I'm with the Coke team. Sorry.
There you go. All right. Well, we didn't think we needed Nick. You had asked us at our last, at the first hearing, if we could produce for you a lighting plan. You asked if we could produce renderings in context of the solar storage equipment at grade. And you also asked for a rendering from, I believe, the top or near the top of Kendrick Street. And we submitted that information, those materials to Alyssa, and I'm sure she's distributed them where they needed to go. And I don't think you want to hear from a lawyer talking about renderings and views. So I think the most appropriate person on our team to talk about that would be for Marcel to take over from here. Marcel?
Thank you, Rick. May I share an image that was previously provided just to orient the board here? It's a layout of the site.
Yeah, go ahead.
Great. So again, this is the site located at 140 Kendrick Street. Here is I-95, the off-ramp, and Kendrick Street. We have previously shown renderings at the off-ramp here located at this number 1, as well as lower down on the hill, Kendrick Street, circle number 2. And the request has been to show a rendering from higher up on the hill to provide a better understanding of what that view shed is. There's also a request to show, as Rick was saying, a rendering from the ground just to show what the electrical equipment that would be located in these 3 parking spaces, how that would view. Am I sharing my screen or the entire application here? I just want to make sure that you're able to see the next.
Yeah, we can see the images.
Great. So this is the view from the top of the hill at Kendrick Street, starting at the overpass of I-95 and headed eastward. As you can see, there is a large amount of existing trees and vegetation that's primarily concealing the garage located behind that area. And as you travel further east, that continues to be the case. Until we get to about this point here, which is the area from which we generated a second rendering to show what the view would look like at the top of Kendrick Street, which is this image here. We've also gone ahead and taken a rendering at the bottom of the, this is a photo here demonstrating what the existing conditions are currently. At the bottom of the garage, you can see Eversource's electrical transformer located here. And these are the 3 parking spaces in which we would be placing electrical equipment that would supply the energy storage components of the project, as well as the main inverter and connections to the transformer area here. There's a second photo also just showing a different viewpoint of, again, these 3 parking spaces, which would house the electrical equipment. And then finally, we have a plan here of what exactly that electrical equipment is that's located in these 3 parking spaces. There are the energy storage components, the battery cabinets, and the control panel that supplies the supports the controls of the batteries themselves. There are some additional kind of combiner boxes and the inverter, which is converting the DC electricity into AC electricity that then flows out into the grid through the transformer, again, located already here on site. This is what that equipment looks like in plan view. Again, it's slightly just oriented a little differently with the sidewalk being here. That's the sidewalk on the side here. The garage in the background here is on the left side of this orientation, so that the parking spaces and viewpoint that we're seeing is looking out here to the left. Here is an image, a rendering of what that electrical equipment would look like from an aerial viewpoint. Again, here that battery energy storage components taking up kind of this one parking space here, and then additional equipment supporting it, as well as that inverter spanning the 3 parking spaces. The yellow items are bollards protecting that equipment. And then we have a few just images from spec sheets that show what that equipment roughly looks like, gray boxes. I do have an additional rendering that we received today and was not submitted as part of this package. It does take a view from here on the ground looking outwards or towards the equipment. If it's permissible to the board, I would like to share that as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, please, thanks.
Excellent. Here's that image. So again, hopefully providing a little more clarity on heights and what this equipment at grade looks like in relation to the canopy structure itself and the existing transformer box that is on site. The third request was just to submit a lighting plan, which we've included here, a layout of what the lighting that's being proposed is. There are 35 light fixtures that are, I'll zoom in on these high efficiency LED lights. They have a lifespan of about 100,000 hours, and at 10 hours a day, that's about 27 years. So again, meant to last for the duration of the project and beyond. They also have a low profile. They would be mounted to the bottom of the rails on the canopy structure itself. And I'll go down to the spec here. They're about 6 inches. That would be, again, flush mounted, so not a pendant or anything like that hanging downwards. They're 30 watt. I think we have this spec. And it is these, again, different viewpoint of what they look like in the 30 watt size, 14 inches across. And I believe that responds to the 3 requested items.
All right, thank you. That was helpful, and we appreciate the renderings of the electrical equipment. It's always hard to gauge how big those can be and how intrusive they might or might not be in a particular location. So I would, Bob, do you want
Sure.
to
Thanks.
make any comment?
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for that presentation. That's what we're looking for. That's very helpful. I'm glad, and thank you for getting back to us so quickly. I'll leave the lighting plan for last because I think the other two I'm satisfied with. The additional views from Kendrick Street, the foliage, well, there's still trees there even without the leaves on, so that will mitigate, I think, some of my concerns with the large expanse of the array. The energy storage facility is sort of, I would say, this image here indicates it's sort of tucked away and it's in the best location for the purpose it serves. So I think that's good. And I think the lights are interesting. I'm not familiar with that, but it looks appropriate. So a couple quick questions on the lighting. Those lights, you said they'd be attached to the underside of the structural beams or the grid that actually holds the panels, which I presume will be at 2 different levels, correct?
Correct. The rails themselves, and I
Okay.
can pull open. I believe I also have the structural drawings of the structure that I could share here to provide a better understanding.
Okay, that's just the words so far helping because I believe the beams would be lower, so they would be tucked up under.
That's right. So they're under these railed sections here. So you have
Okay.
these beams still that are blockading some of the horizontal light with the light itself under the structure.
Okay, and if you could leave that rendering up and maybe slide left or right to the edge of the garage, because if my memory serves correctly, yes, right over there on the left side of the wall, right there where that connection is to the wall, just below where your cursor is right now. Yeah, right in there. If my memory serves, there are lights there as well that are not on posts, but they're sort of little box lights that shine down like at waist height. Are those intended to be kept and remain?
All of the existing lighting on the top deck would be removed.
Okay.
Replaced by the lighting that'd be under the canopy structure.
All right, and that you're confident that recreates the amount of watts or lumens and coverage, et cetera?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe there was photometric in there, Bob. So
Right.
we can
Yes,
check-
good.
we can double check that.
All right, thank you. That was very helpful. I'm satisfied, Mark. No further questions at this time.
Okay, Deborah?
This is unrelated to the issues that came up, but this is the first time I'm seeing this. I'm just curious, when you look at sort of the aerial from above, and there are bites taken out of 3 of the 4 corners. I'm just curious why there are 3 and not the 4th one, or.
Yeah, let me see if I can, sorry to be clicking around here, find the right drawing. Just
So I'm
so-
looking at view 6 on your submittal.
Oh, yeah, so these areas here basically do not have any structural elements from the garage itself to be able to support a column atop it for the canopy structure. So we've used the existing conditions on site basically to be able to maximize the size of the solar and renewable energy generated. And these areas didn't have structural components within the garage that would be able to support the canopy.
Okay, I mean, it's not that anybody's really gonna be seeing it from this view for the most part. But if you are sort of looking down on this, is there gonna be like a huge, like blinding glare on the panels?
I'll take this one. So we addressed this during our last meeting, and the solar panels are designed to maximize the absorption of light. That's how they work. And so, early on, we did some glare analysis, and then we found that the FAA had pretty extensively studied glare from solar panels because flight pilots were the most concerned with that issue. And we've found zero glare issues, and we've done 13 solar projects, 3 garage canopies, very similar to this one, and haven't had any glare issues.
Okay. Then my last question, I was just trying to find the image of the battery containers in a parking lot. Did you consider putting an enclosure around those, or there's just problems with the clearance requirements? Just to make that maybe a little less, maybe a little more attractive?
So we are required to maintain a certain amount of clearances around the components themselves for the purposes of servicing the equipment. That does dictate how closely we can space things. We did try to minimize the footprint to the greatest extent possible and maintain it within these 3 parking spaces already next to that Eversource transformer that's located there.
I mean, are these things usually left like this rather than having an enclosure? I mean, I realize you probably, even if you lose another parking space, to still have your clearance around the equipment.
So there are 2 approaches. One, the fence approach, I think, tends to, it still needs to be readily accessible to the fire department, to anyone who's servicing the equipment. So traditionally, it's kind of left off with bollards, and that way, if there's an emergency, someone's able to quickly respond to it. If Eversource needs to be out there, there's not kind of a fence or anything that provides an additional obstacle and barrier.
Okay, I'm good.
Susan?
Nothing to add.
All right, I guess my comments would be that I appreciate I'm not going to reinvent the wheel here. I know that this was reviewed before. I had relayed a couple of my questions to Bob before that meeting regarding whether one solid plain field was why, if it could be staggered the way you see some other solar arrays. But clearly that discussion was satisfied with the way you've done it. But I want to second Deborah's questions. We typically, you can see there was some attempt at screening the Eversource transformer, although it grew into a much larger tree, and so now it's pretty visible from the ground. But that would have been my question: is there any reason not to do any screening here? Just I know that the building owner is here, so if this is the sort of dead end corner of the site, certainly with the street elevated above, garage is one side. But at some point, some tenant's going to be staring out their window at this, and I'm just want to make sure that we've discussed the idea of why it's not necessary to do any more screening here. Does it need access, or would planting? I mean, we just did a transformer with the new fire station, and they wanted to plant a whole hedgerow of yews around the thing, which we actually did not like. But is there any reason not to remove the paving there and put these on a pad and have some planting sort of at the front edge of the parking spaces as they exist now? because you have a fair amount of space between, they're set well back into this part, what are parking spaces. So sort of along that dimension line, or even a little bit further away from the units. Is there any reason not to do a little screen wall that has gates that open, or some planting screening, or is that accessibility to this frequent enough that would be a problem?
Marcel, can you go to the aerial from above?
There you go.
My only concern there is that anything we add in front is going to have clearance requirements, and then we're going to be impeding on the drive aisle potentially, and making it harder to access the storage. And given where it is on the site, we're comfortable with the aesthetics, and trust me, our leasing team is very tuned into everything we do aesthetically here. And honestly, the battery storage is something we want to show off. It's part of our mission here at this property to do a net zero project. We think that the storage is very desirable to the tenants we're working with at this property. And since it's, given where it's located, we're not particularly concerned. I think we can noodle on it a little bit and see if there's something we can do, but I think it's going to be a little bit challenging given where the storage is in proximity to the drive lane
Okay.
and the clearance.
I just thought we should talk about it because we would often have these screened to some degree, as I said, so.
Yeah.
Mark, can I offer a suggestion or ask a question? If we go back to the plan view, please, of these storage devices. Yeah, right there. Is there clearance needed on the south on the page side next to that fourth parking space? And the reason I'm asking is, could just a single line of fence be put here? Still get plenty of access from this side, but from the outer side of the site and the front, that big rotary or whatever in the front door, the whole complex, you would see back to just a flat row of fence along that parking space. And potentially if you didn't need clearance right here, you could just turn it a little and leave it like that and leave the rest open. And if it works, I don't know, you'd have to do some measurement, but it could maybe go right on that parking stripe and you wouldn't lose that fourth space. I don't know what you think about that.
Bob, are you suggesting that you could take your red line and move it closer to the end of the fourth parking space so it sits on the line?
Yeah. My question was this zone right here, is that, do you need clearance this way? Or are they access from the other side? And it may not just be access clearance, there may be air clearance required as well.
If you recall, when we were talking about parking spaces, losing 3 parking spaces, we had to make up the 3 parking spaces elsewhere on site, which we did.
Right.
So this would probably result in the loss of a 4th parking space, which we'd have to make up only because the original special permit has a minimum number of parking spaces, and the language is fairly clear. It says at all times we have to maintain, I don't remember the numbers, either 1534 or 1334, but whatever the number is, we're right there now. So I mean,
Yeah.
sure, we could look at it, but then we'd have to figure out if the parking space, the 4th parking space is going to be impeded and therefore non-existent. We'd have to see if we could make it up someplace. I wouldn't want to see the screening be an absolute condition where we're caught betwixt and between screening and a parking space that can't be made up that we just lost.
Yeah.
Understood. My suggestion would be first determine whether or not you need to lose the space.
Mhm.
Right, because if it could work without that,
Yeah.
that would be a good solution, I think.
I
Yeah, I'm
agree.
not sure if just screening one side accomplishes a lot.
Yeah,
I guess it sort of does from the direction of travel and things, so.
yeah. It was
Um,
just a suggestion.
So what we would be doing is because you're in a site plan review process, we will be sending a memo to the planning board.
Mhm.
And So we just relay to them the discussion we had and any suggestions we made, and then they will make a final determination. So we will record that we talked about different options for screening on this. But there was concern about losing the fourth parking space, and then they can decide how important it is to them
Mhm.
that it be explored. But we want to just, so we will be
Sure.
telling them that this was something we discussed with you and some of the thoughts that came up while we did it, but we're not.
That makes eminently good sense to me as a lawyer, because they are in fact the special permit granting authority that granted the original permit. So if they wanted to modify it to allow
Right.
for screening, and the unfortunate case for loss of parking space, I suppose they could do that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Nope, I'm all set, Mark.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining us and coming in. We will, we have a memo started that, and we will finish that up and submit it to the planning board.
Thank you very much. Just on a personal note, from the Boston Properties team, and I don't just mean the people from Boston Properties, I mean all of our consultants. Whenever we have appeared before you, and we've appeared numerous times since last spring, we have always been treated very well, and we like coming here to make an informed presentation to an informed design review board. So thank you very much for your
You're
attention.
welcome.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peace.
Thank
Good night,
you.
all.
All right, the next item on the agenda is 151 Reservoir Street, Supply New England signage. Are they here?
Yes, I'm your Gunnar McCormick from Magnolia Sign Company.
All right, why don't you take us through? It's fairly straightforward, but go ahead and if you want to take us through what you're doing.
Sure, we're proposing to make a non-illuminated aluminum belt sign. It's 42 inches by 96 inches. We did that to keep it under the square footage requirements, and it's going to go up on the wall on that building at 151 Reservoir.
Is it illuminated? Can I?
No, it is not.
Okay. Just trying to get to I thought I saw a little site plan that showed the side of the building. There it is. All right. Deborah, do you have any questions, comments?
Okay, we're just trying to look at the, so, sorry, again, the surface, it's aluminum. And sorry, the letters again are what material?
Vinyl. It's flat vinyl on aluminum back, and then there's an aluminum molding around it.
So the edge is the black, the color of the edge in around the front and around the side?
Yes, I mean it's a frame all the way around. It's a very dark bronze. That's what that black, it looks black in the image. And then the vinyl, the lettering is a flat cut vinyl on a white aluminum background.
Okay, and this is, okay, so I'm sorry, I'm just zooming in on this a little bit. Then the placement on the facade is, hang on a second. Is centered between those windows
Yes.
on the proposed. Oops. I don't really have a problem with it.
Okay, Susan, do you have any questions, comments?
No,
Bob?
Yeah, what is a belt sign? I'm not familiar with that term.
I don't know how universal it is, but it's a sign term. It basically, it's like a belt as opposed to like an illuminated cabinet or channel letters.
Okay. That helps. And is there one tenant in this building? Like, was there any thought of locating the sign over what appears to be a door behind that black van in the photograph?
That's a potential. There's some lighting and whatnot we may need, we'll see when we get out there. I think there is a light right there. It used to be 2 tenants and now it's all one.
All right, well, we are typically interested where it will go in the building.
Okay, would it be better over the door, you think?
Well, I'd like to have the conversation with my colleagues and with you as well. And then is it presumably centered height-wise from the top of the window to the what do you call it, the cap at the parapet?
Yep, yes.
Provide, now if it was, yeah, I do see some fixtures over that door.
But the fixture is the one that's kind of the square one, the gray one that points down, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna make the same comment about the sign maybe wants to be over the door. I mean, this whole elevation is kind of so nondescript. I think it would actually help sort of focus to have sort of the door and the sign be a sort of a more of a combined kind of unit in a good way.
Yeah, I agree, Deborah. And then my last question, Mark, would be colors TBD. We typically want to discuss that, in these kind of presentations.
That was going to be a vinyl, and we hadn't nailed down at that point with Supply New England what those they use PMS colors, and we use cut vinyl generally. Or if it's a print, and we haven't really decided on that yet. We hadn't.
Can we assume that they're going to be as close to the colors in the rendering as possible? It's not going to be red and orange.
No, absolutely not. No, those are their colors. That is the intent to have those blues.
Okay.
And then, Mark, my last comment is, and Deborah and Susan, what do we think about the way the pros go? The tagline.
In this situation, I'm okay with it. It's not a busy road. That's a pretty private space back there on Reservoir. People that go there are headed there. So if they want to promote themselves a little bit, what actually does Supply New England supply?
It's like kitchen equipment for the trade. It's
Okay.
generally for trade. It's not like a public front.
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason I ask Gunnar about that tagline to my colleagues is we typically don't have a lot of those in our downtown business district, but I appreciate Mark's comment and yours too about the nature of this business. So I'm okay with it in this case.
Okay.
Yeah, same.
All right. I have no other issues with it. I would agree that it looks fine in that location, but in the end, sometimes we find that should you get someone that is not new and the parking lot happens to be full, having the sign at the doors, it's a good key to help people find it. So and I don't think I don't think it's essential that it be in the center of the building, which is kind of what it looks like it is. So I'm going to agree with the colleagues. We'd prefer that you install it over the door at the same mounting height, if that's okay.
We can certainly do that. Yes.
Okay. So I would take a motion to approve this sign with the condition that it be relocated over the entrance door.
I would make that motion with a friendly amendment and we get the word centered in there somewhere, both vertically and horizontally.
Okay, centered over door.
Yeah, thanks.
Right, it might need to go up a little bit to not be too tight to the light below.
Yeah, I think it could be centered both vertically and horizontally
Okay.
there and work just fine.
So centered over door and between light and coping.
Yes. So that would be the motion.
Second,
Okay, we come to the vote. Bob Dermody,
Yes.
Susan Opton,
Yes.
and Deborah Robinson,
yes.
and the chair approves. Great, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
And the next item on the agenda is another site plan review for Coca-Cola, 9 B Street. So Evans, you want to introduce the team and give us a picture of this for, please?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, thank you. We're here on behalf of Coca-Cola Northeast with regard to the site at 9 B Street. It's, as you mentioned, it's undergoing site plan review before the planning board. So we're here for the design review board's review and input. The project, which you'll hear more about from our presenters, is basically a major upgrading of the site. We're going to be reducing the building footprint, increasing the parking, upgrading the facade, redesigning interior portions of the building, and increasing open space and landscaping. And so our team members, one of whom we were having a little difficulty with the absence of an invite. So Elisa, if you could bring him over. He's a member of the public, Matt Labonte. At the moment, he's observing as a member of the public. If you can bring him over. But our team that'll be presenting tonight is Mark Noguera with Design Group, as well as Matt Labonte, also with Design Group. Caitlin Glass is our civil engineer with VHB, and Eric Bednarek is our landscape architect. So those will be our presenters, starting with Mark.
Thanks, Evan. Mark Noguera with Design Group. I'm the client lead for Design Group with Coca-Cola Northeast. Work with them on a lot of projects at a lot of facilities that I'll be representing their interests tonight. I'm a civil engineer by trade and training, but now I get to play in all kinds of fun worlds like Coca-Cola distribution facilities. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. So the property was originally constructed by for American Can Company, and then in 1975, Coca-Cola Bottling took over the facility and began a combination bottling and distribution facility. They ran that bottling distribution facility headed out of Atlanta until 2017, when Coke Northeast, formerly Coca-Cola Beverages of Northern New England, headquartered out of Bedford, New Hampshire, acquired a number of the Coca-Cola refreshment facilities in Massachusetts, New England, and New York. In 2018, Coke Northeast ceased operations for the bottling aspect of the facility, and now is focused on distribution. And whereas its proximity to Boston is making it one of the largest distribution facilities in their portfolio. It's a very important location and project for Coca-Cola. This is a 40-year investment in this site, primarily set up to modernize their operations. They're really looking for operational success for the next generations. Substantial improvements in life safety, operational improvements inside the building, and then site beautification. So with that, I think Caitlin, the next slide is yours.
Yep. Thanks, Mark. My name is Caitlin Glass. I'm with VHB. We're the civil engineer for the project. So I'm just going to walk through a few slides showing the existing site conditions, and then I'll turn it over to our landscape architect, who will talk a little bit more about the landscape design and proposed site improvements. So the existing site is bounded by B Street to the north, 3rd Ave to the east, Kendrick Street to the south, and Route 128 to the west. As you can see on this aerial, the existing site is largely covered by pavement, concrete, and building areas. And there are a number of loading docks and truck parking spaces, particularly located along the 3rd Avenue side of the site. The existing employee entrance is off of B Street in this area over here, if you can see my cursor. So just kind of walking around the site, this is the street view from B Street. The frontage on B Street is mostly a grassed area with a chain link fence. The existing employee access is located at this corner here, which you can see kind of in the lower image. And then midway along this block is the receiving entrance that is gated. The project is proposing to put improved landscaping along the employee access area and also install decorative fencing along B Street. And Eric will go a little bit more into detail about the proposed landscaping. Moving on to 3rd Avenue, similarly, there is a grass landscape area with chain link fence. There's lots of truck parking along 3rd Avenue and existing guardrail. Similar to B Street, the project is proposing to install decorative fence along 3rd Avenue. And here's just a couple of site photos. The one on the left is showing the existing chain link fence on 3rd Avenue. And then the photo on the right is showing the existing corner of Kendrick Street and 3rd Avenue, where the project is proposing to reclaim a portion of this pavement and turn it into landscape area. And then on Kendrick Street, the corner at Kendrick Street and 3rd Ave, there's a good amount of existing vegetation that is screening the site, which you can see in the upper left photo. And then as you move further west on Kendrick Street, there's a pretty significant grade change where the roadway is raising up and then the site is down below, which you can see in that bottom image. And then lastly, moving on to Route 128, the top view is from, the photo on the top is the exit ramp, and then the bottom view is from the on-ramp to Kendrick Street. You can see the existing employee entrance kind of in this area here. This is an image of the proposed site plan. So just reflecting the building footprint changes. The project is proposing to remove portions of the building, which are shown in red. The existing building footprint that will remain is shown in brown, and then in green you can see the expanded building footprint area, and then there's a small rectangular area that's shown kind of in darker green. That is an expanded building footprint. As I mentioned earlier, the project is proposing to introduce new landscape areas and overall will reduce the total amount of impervious area on the site. On this site plan, you can see in green the new impervious areas. In the reworked employee entrance in the upper left here, we're putting in new landscape islands and a bioretention basin. And then down kind of to the southwestern corner, a pretty large landscape triangular area, and then down at the corner of 3rd Ave and Kendrick Street is that triangular area of pavement that's being reclaimed that I mentioned earlier. Also on this site, on this slide, we're showing where the decorative fencing is going to be installed, which is shown in the purple line on the site plan, and then there's a kind of a representative photo of what that site, what that fence will look like. And now I'll turn it over to Eric to talk a little bit about the proposed landscape plan.
Thanks, Caitlin. Again, Eric Bednarik, I'm a landscape architect with VHB. I'll run through, as you see here, the color landscape site plan, along with some of the details highlighting the planting design as well. So as Caitlin mentioned, there was a pink portion of the building that's being removed where you see the top left corner where the parking area is, which is really nice because now it has an opportunity to introduce not only enhanced parking for visitors and employees, but also enhanced landscape as well. Currently, there are no parking lot islands with trees or shrubs or ground cover. Now there's a nice opportunity for that, along with this really nice enhanced entrance at that southwest or northwest corner of the building. with an entrance patio, bio infiltration area, which is that L-shaped green area that kind of softens the loading and parking area to the right in the yellow. And also just bringing in a multitude of parking lot trees. And as you look at our plant list to the left, you'll see that the majority of our plant list is native. We always try to strive to get to 100% native, but sometimes we introduce some other plants that, especially in a condition like this, where you're talking a lot of salt inundation within the parking lot, heat island effect, what have you, just a really urban condition. We bring in some other plant material that has really proven itself to do really, really well in those conditions. In addition to that, there are a few plants that are brought into this landscape plant list to really enhance the brand identity of Coca-Cola as well. It's always nice to be able to take the landscape and not just look at it as introducing green, but how can you utilize the landscape in particular types of plants specified that enhance a brand of whether it's a corporation or a building, architecture, what have you. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. Additionally, as you look, if you bounce back, Caitlin, sorry. As you look at the perimeter edges, as Caitlin was talking about along B Street, we've introduced a whole linear line of street trees, whether they're Armstrong red maples, river birches next to the bioinfiltration area that you see in the green, again, the L-shaped green area. And then continuing down with some Carpic red maples, continuing all the way down to 3rd Avenue and accentuating that corner as well, along with some nice masses of evergreens, dark American arborvitae, some red twig dogwood, and some daylilies that bring some color in throughout the summer months as well. And we've continued another buffer area to kind of soften this parking lot area, not only that corner at 3rd Avenue B Street, but also continuing down B Street to the other entrance that you see into the parking lot, where there's another buffer planting area there as well. And as you continue down to Kendrick, as Caitlin mentioned, there's this existing buffer that wraps around the corner of 3rd Avenue in Kendrick, which provides some nice buffering to the parking lot. We did notice that there are some gaps in that buffer strip with his existing plants, so it's kind of hard to see on this plan, but down towards where Caitlin mentioned that little triangular landscape area that we're taking away parking lot area, there are some evergreens tucked into the existing vegetated buffer along that edge to soften those views looking into the parking lot. So as you continue up Kendrick Street, and as Caitlin mentioned, that large landscape kind of triangular area at the southeast or southwest corner of the parking lot. Again, some nice parking lot trees on the corners with some low plants, durable plants, whether it's Shenandoah switchgrass, whether it's some low juniper, Bar Harbor, or Will Tony juniper, along with maybe some daylilies as well, again, bringing some color in. And right now we do propose that as a loam and seed situation in that large landscape area. We are researching to see if it does make sense to do bioinfiltration there as well. And that's something we're working through currently. Now, as if we take a little bit closer look into that parking lot area, just want to give you a little taste of what the planting design looks like. So in the bottom right corner of this image, you'll see that this is the entrance, one of the entrances into the building, where primarily a lot of people will be heading into the building. And then a little bit further down from this image, it's cut off where the primary entrance going into the building. But it does show you a little bit more detail of the interior parking lot design, where we have some Valley Forge elms in the center of the parking lot, which is the UA. We have some Carpic red maples on kind of the outer interior islands, and then some birches over to the left, near that left access drive where it's a relocated flagpole. And then again, within the parking lot, we have some switchgrass in the center. We have some Rosy Returns daylily, accentuating each side of the grasses, along with some low juniper along the edges of the curb line, creating a nice balance in the wintertime as well. And also a nice contrast to when the dailies are flowering with the evergreen along the forefront edges of the curb line. Again, all very durable plant material that we've used in the past. and have really kind of tested the time of these conditions. Again, you see the L-shaped biofiltration area accentuated along the edges with winterberry, plethora, river birch, to really introduce that as a nice feature into the landscape. And again, the same type of plant palette, with the exception of some azalea that we did introduce along the building foundation edge. Maybe not so much native, but it is a really nice plant that we wanted to introduce. Again, kind of enhancing that brand of Coca-Cola, bringing some reds into the design, creating more of like a enhanced placemaking. Part of the design that when people do arrive, they really know and understand where they're at, and create an impact in the spring, and create a more of like a celebration of being a Coca-Cola in the spring when it's flowering. And the daylilies would transition after the azaleas during the summer months, bringing an additional hot pink red color into it as well. So those are really kind of the two primary plants that may not be native, but really enhance the design quite a bit. Again, we have inkberry introduced into the design to bring some evergreen during the winter months. We also have some emerald green arborvitae that accentuate the corners of the building in the main entrance when you enter in, very low maintenance, but also create a nice diverse landscape planting design. There's also a little gateway that you see up near where First Ave is coming into the site. There's also a nice mass plantings that introduce you into the parking lot area. And as we continue on to the next slide, you just notice some of the plant material, images of the plant material that would be proposing. Again, some of these more upright type of red maples, again, switching the species to create a little bit better diversity, but also, you know, a little bit more upright because they are either in parking lots or along the street edges. And we just want to make sure there's really no impact for vehicles to those. But also looking at fall interest as well, mixing up different fall colors so that when all the lower ground cover plants are not flowering, you have this really nice mixture of fall colors as well. And again, showing the emerald green arborvitae and dark American arborvitae as well. And then looking at some of the plants, shrubbery, ground cover on the next slide. Again, we have clethra, winterberry, inkberry, shenandoah, switchgrass, a lot of more native stuff. The red twig dogwood, again, bringing some of that red color into the winter months when your azalea and your rosy returns daylily are not in flower, including the winterberry in the winter as well. You know, and again, showing that type of low ground cover juniper that when you do complement it with either rosy returns or an azalea, it has a really nice contrast to it. And it really brings out that landscape appeal. And with that, I'll turn it over to Matt Labonte to talk a little bit more about the enhancements of the building.
Thanks, Matt Labonte. I am a licensed architect and project manager with Design Group. First slide here. This is their aerial view, similar to the one that you previously saw. And next slide, please, Caitlin. Here's our existing view from 128. Gives you an appreciation of what the front of the facade looks like as it faces 128. A lot of equipment up on that roof that you can see right there, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Next slide, please. There's, as we come around the corner on the lower road parallel with the highway, this is the front facade. Again, basically what we have here is an existing EIFS clad building on this elevation. Next slide, please. From 3rd Ave, there's the main truck entrance. This is the rear, what we call the rear of the building. Behind some of those trucks, you can see what is the existing fleet service area that will be demolished as part of this project. Next slide, please. And here is the elevation to the south. What you can see over on the left-hand side, those two small outbuildings are coming down. Actually, they are down now. The remaining materials that you see here on the left side is an old metal panel, very tired, very worn, very outdated. As the you transition around to the other side of the building, more towards the north, we've got existing brick veneer. Next slide, please. As part of the improvement program here, as you've heard some of these aspects, so I'll go down them rather quickly. Removing that front office, that low one-story section. We'll be renovating the fleet services wing by removing the existing sections and replacing that with a roughly 14,000 square foot single-story building, more modernized and applicable to their required functions. We'll be reskinning, I'll show you those elevations shortly, along Route 128, around the corner on B Street. And anything that is not reskinned will be color matched and coordinated with the new materials that we're putting on the building. Mechanical equipment, about 2/3 of what you see on that roof right now will be coming off, as it's non-functional, antiquated equipment that's been on the roof and it's just never taken off. So as part of this project, we'll be stripping all that down. Anything that's not functioning will be removed. Very minimal additional equipment would be put on the roof as part of this construction project. And painting of the facade, we'll take a look at that on the next elevations as well. Here's our elevation from 128, top west elevation. You'll see the main entry, which is pretty obvious with the Coca-Cola sign there. That is roughly where the existing office right now, the low section comes out. What we're proposing there is a dark monolithic benchmark type high-end panel as our accent. The remaining metal panel that you see there would be an insulated metal panel, slightly corrugated with 2 tones. And the Coca-Cola red will be running horizontally through this, as we've done on other buildings of theirs to continue their brand identity. As we move off towards the south, you'll see the addition of the new sign that we're proposing, which is their lighthouse, which is part of their brand image.
Just in case, sorry to interrupt you, Matt, but just in case any members of the board are wondering, we're not here on a formal application for a sign permit tonight, but we did want to bring these signs to your attention and get some informal feedback from you.
Thanks, Evans. I do have some square footages of those signs if the board is interested. Over as we continue on towards the south in the corner, we're going to prepare an accent, so to speak, on that corner, which will be made up of 2 different types of metal panel that will mimic panels on the other elevation. We'll be replacing all the glazing and adding some in the office area, which will be a nice spandrel type glass and clear glass in a continuous look, making a nice clean image. Next slide, please. These elevations here are as seen from B Street. As we come around the corner, we'll continue those same materials, same glazing, color scheme. As we continue on off towards the east, we will convert over to a painting and color scheme over the existing brick that is there now. It's in pretty good shape. Next elevation, please. And as we come around the rear of the building, facing 3rd Ave, we will continue to match our color scheme around the corner and across all the docks, the new fleet services area. Right down into that corner. Next slide, please. Here's a pretty good representation rendering as seen from 128. Obviously a little lower on grade level, but that'll give you a pretty good idea of what those materials look like more closer to reality. Landscaping and parking are a pretty good representation of our proposal right now.
So can I interrupt with a quick question? So to my left, as you're standing here, is that Third Ave?
Yes, that's correct.
And
Oh,
not-
sorry,
not-
that's
not
B
very
Street.
far.
That is
I'm-
B Street.
Okay. All right, B Street. So you're close to the entrance at that corner of B Street
Correct.
in this image.
The existing entrance, yes.
Thank you.
Lighting improvements. Our current proposal right now is to rework all of the lighting at the front side of the building as it faces 128. All our lighting that's currently there now, a lot of it is 40-foot poles with no regard whatsoever to photometrics. What we are proposing is to comply fully with the town's requirements for lighting, keeping our poles down to 20 feet. Dark sky compliant, no spillovers over the property line. Adequate lighting levels without too much. And examples of our fixtures being proposed are shown here on the slide.
So Matt, had you finished?
Yes, sorry, I'm done. Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. So I think that concludes our presentation, and
Okay.
we would like to hear your feedback and input.
Okay. I guess I was, by the time we got through, I was able to orient myself, but I was having a little trouble sort of. So I appreciate the color diagram that showed what you're removing and what was an addition and some of those things. But just to clarify, the entrance to the more heavily landscaped parking lot is right at that turn of B Street and was that First Ave, right? That corner, is that correct? I'm looking at the site plan that was in the package.
At the corner of B Street and Third Ave,
Yeah.
that intersection.
No, B Street and First.
B Street and First, that's correct.
Right by 128. Okay.
Gotcha, yes.
It was a little disorienting just to look at the flat elevations and see where the big Coca-Cola sign is. It seemed like it was well beyond that parking area, but I assume that it's actually sort of at the south end of that parking area is where that main doorway will be. Am I seeing, there just seemed like there was a lot of glass facade to the left of the entrance, and I couldn't figure out where the entrance was. Yeah, that's great. So if we talk about the more landscape parking lot, so the entrance is where? I mean, the door is right, oh, it's
No.
there.
No, there's multiple entrances.
Well, the
The
one with
main
the large
entrance with the
Coca-Cola, the large glass facade and the Coca-Cola sign. where-
That's in the southeast corner of the parking area. Caitlin, can you point to the main?
Right there, okay,
Correct, that's the one.
all right. Well, the scale of this drawing, the scale of that site is so huge that, when I looked at the building, I saw a lot of wall to the left of that entrance, and it doesn't seem as big on the plan, but I'm looking at 18 parking spaces, so I guess it is. It's a challenging site due to could you explain the entrance, the truck entrance a little bit to us? That's at an angle? is everyone going to come down Third Ave and turn in? I'm just a
Yes.
little,
Yeah, so that's actually the existing truck entrance now. So there's no change proposed for the truck entrance. They will be, some of them do come down Third Ave from B Street, but not many right now. Now that the new Kendrick Street overpass and access to the highway is in place, they primarily come from Kendrick Street to and turn into the facility.
okay. And it seems that the planting is focused mostly on the new employee parking area. And then there's the green triangle in the southwest area. But that doesn't have a lot of landscaping, it's mostly grass.
That's correct.
Okay. And then in the southeast corner of Kendrick and Third Avenue, there's not, I don't read a lot of planting in that portion either, just
Yeah, that's
grass, loam and seeded area.
Yeah, there's primarily all that vegetation that Caitlin showed in one of the existing condition pictures along the edges.
Okay,
And then there's again some infill right where that triangular piece is going up Kendra Street before you get to the yellow parking spaces. Yeah, right about there. There's several different evergreens. We're just gonna tuck into these little blank areas in between the existing vegetation.
and then you're adding some at the entrance a little bit.
And that's correct. So the two pockets, one on that angled entrance that you see there. Yep, and then one at the top there,
Yeah,
north corner, Third Ave and B Street.
okay.
It may be helpful to, I don't know if you can enlarge this image a little bit. Down at the Third Avenue and Kendrick Street corner, there are some new plantings there, but they're sort of obscured by these dotted lines.
Yeah, I'm looking on the submitted plan and I can see a little more detail. And it's also has ghosted in some of the existing, I believe. Yeah. Okay, well, I just wanted to those were some sort of general orientation. And then the other sort of general question, the lighting on the truck bay side is unchanged or off the building? Could you?
It's currently unchanged. There are a number of poles, mostly on the Third Ave side, pointing back towards the building. And we're not doing any changes out there to the orientation or the flow of the truck court, but they did relamp them to LED fixtures, I think, within the last 2 years.
Okay. All right, so I just wanted to get some general orientation questions that were found. I mean, you didn't submit as much information in our package, so we appreciate the additional images, but I did want to kind of clarify where some things were happening before the rest of the board. Susan, have you had a chance to kind of look at landscaping and sort of give us some input as to what they're doing there in the site plan?
Yeah, I looked at it and I saw the native plants. That was nice. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I have a couple questions and then some comments. The trucks, are they all parking over here along this fence?
Yes.
And
Well, actually, they're yeah, basically along Third Ave, and there'll be some along Kendrick Street. And then they'll also be
Here?
parked at the docks themselves. Correct.
here and here and here,
Yep, and even down at the third, yep, you got it.
all those are going to be red trucks?
There'll be trails of variety of sizes between 35 feet, 45, 48, and 53, mostly in the 48 to 45.
Okay. And the decorative fence is going all around the property or just along Third Street?
Oh, there it is.
Okay.
Yeah, Third Ave and a portion of B Street.
And how tall is the fence going to be?
8 feet.
Okay, I think those were my only questions. I did have some, I guess, a couple of comments about plants and then about maintenance. I understand that this corner over here already has some existing shrubbery that screens the corner, but the existing shrubbery is not very attractive. So I feel like just adding to it is just creating like a more of a tangled mess. I don't know what your feeling was, whether it was just more important to keep the screening. It is green and it does screen, but when you drive by there, it kind of looks like an invasive weedy corner. And I'm not sure just adding to it is gonna make that feel better. I don't know, maybe you have different thoughts about it.
I know from, dealing with different municipalities, I know many just don't want to really remove a lot of material, so we just want to be sensitive to that. I agree with you, in the sense of it certainly can be ratty. At least when I had reviewed the site, it was green and there was these certain pockets that were a little bit more open. So we were going to tuck, the evergreens in those little open pocket areas. But things could be trimmed out if there's something that is dead or just really unsightly. If removing something that's dead or that unsightly, that could easily be done while they're in there.
Well, that was one comment, and then another comment was the kind of area along here. I guess I'll back up and say I'm thinking in terms of maintenance that a lot of the existing grass that's there, I'm not sure if it's cared for or not, but it sort of looks not cared for. And I'm wondering if there's really a need to replace turf grass. Can we plant something that doesn't need to be mowed and is drought tolerant? And I don't know, mowing these little strips of grass that don't want to grow there anyway seems difficult. And if you could put some pretty grass in there that doesn't need that, maybe just gets cut down once or every year or so, it seems like it would look prettier. And we have water issues now. Grass doesn't look so great on its own. We don't necessarily get our 42 inches of rain every year, so I don't see those little strips looking any better. They might look better when you put them in or reseed them or whatever you're going to do, but I don't think it'll last very long. So I feel like some nice grasses might be easier to handle and look better in the long term than turf. And I would say that about any turf all on the property. And then just kind of on that same thought about, I can tell this is low maintenance. The red theme that you have going, I feel like whenever you submit this package, you should have a facilities maintenance program or something, because a lot of these things don't stay red unless they're cut down every 2 to 3 years. They're red because of the new growth. So if they just stay up for year after year after year after year, they turn gray and also get tangly and ratty looking. And then the whole sort of idea of your red Coke theme disappears. So I think maintenance is going to be a key issue if the red theme is important. And one last thing, and that's the retention pond is, I saw is partially covered with hay, marsh hay or something, if I read that somewhere.
Right, you're talking the big gray structure here, the bioinfiltration.
Yeah, this WM here was, I forget what that was. Wet mix.
Wet meadow.
Oh, wet meadow. Okay, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yep.
I got it mixed up with a different note.
Yep.
So those were my general comments.
All right,
I
thank you.
don't know. I think you'd have to talk to the other members to see how they feel about the corner that's on Kendrick, because I'd like to see it look better than it does now.
Yeah, I think we'll hear more on that, Deborah. I was going to talk about that myself at the end, so I thought that was a good point. Bob, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, a couple of each, please. Thanks for the presentation. Back to the corner of Kendrick and Third. In one of the photos or somewhere on Google, there's some large concrete blocks that appear to be in a sort of a backstop kind of pattern. Is there a plan for those?
They're going away.
Good. All right. That's a good answer. Thank you. That will be a start to helping improve that corner, I think, because they're visible, I think, from Kendrick Street at least at certain times of year. All right, good. And I think this was mentioned during the presentation, and forgive me if I didn't hear the rest of it, but something about roof equipment and what the plans are for that. Is there any refurbishment of the existing screening? Is there any new screening? Any screening being removed? I didn't see it in the elevations presented.
We're going to be removing at least 2/3 of the existing equipment that's on there that is not functioning today.
Okay.
Very little additional equipment will be provided that would be on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be substantial cleanup. A lot of that stuff that's up there is rusted, it's old, it's not functioning. We want it gone. That's our goal.
Good. Might be a good place for a solar array. And then lastly, the site plan again, please. I want to make sure I understand something Susan had mentioned about a wet meadow, which is a new term to me. And then are there any other swales or water collection or anything like that? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
Yeah, go ahead, Caitlin.
right now we're proposing a bioretention basin up in this, the L-shaped area here. And we're also considering putting a retention area in this triangular landscape area down here.
Okay, and what might help you make that decision? The runoff need, or just a owner desire, or what drives that?
Yeah, that was, so when we were in front of the planning board, they asked us to look at other areas where we could provide infiltration, and we're just looking at the phase 1 and some geotech information. There's also some existing utilities under there, so we're just kind of working through the design right now to make sure that that can work there.
Okay, and thank you to all the answers to those. And then I think lastly, I'd just like to put a vote in for the Kendrick and Third Street corner. Maybe that's a discussion you have at the planning board level. Maybe something could be worked out to improve that. Thank you, Mark.
Sure. Deborah.
While you have the rendered site plan up, I'm trying to understand. The areas that are the beige color, is that hardscape? Kind of a tannish color?
Yeah, those are existing concrete areas.
That's all untouched, and like then that sort of corner at the bottom left of the building, that's also just existing.
This
Just right
corner
here, right
here,
there.
yeah, this corner is getting cleaned up a little bit. This was where there were a couple of, there's a shed there and another structure that are being removed, and we're putting in parking and sidewalk. It will be hardscaped, but an improvement over what's there today.
At the east side, your diagram that showed removing part of the building and then reconstructing for this new piece, right? I'm not understanding where that's shown on the elevation. I guess because it's all just rendered as it just part of the work that just gets painted over. Can you show me on the east, that's the east elevation, what those changes are?
So actually, the new fleet building section will be metal panel. Color scheme will match the rest, so it all blends together and looks like it belongs there the entire time with the rest of the building. That center section there between S and N, let's say on the top elevation there. Yep,
Is all new, but it just looks the same because it's all painted,
correct.
the same you're saying.
Yes, it'll all be color matched.
On the back to the west elevation, and maybe if you could put the rendered site plan up again, or this image of the elevations. So the heavily planted parking, you come in, cars come in from that northwest corner is the car driveway. There's that heavily planted area, that's the employee parking with the big entrance with the Coca-Cola sign is the employee entrance.
Employee entrance will be just to the right of that. It's the other dark.
Okay, all right. So that's what I think I was misunderstanding also on the rendered site plan. It seemed like the big Coca-Cola entrance was off the employee parking, and then that secondary entrance. I'm sorry, can you just point again on this plan? The Coca-Cola entrance is
just north of there. Yep.
This one here.
and that is the,
Okay.
Main entrance, just to the south.
so that's the public entrance then, the Coca-Cola sign
Correct.
and the heavily planted area. And then when you're looking at the facade to the right of that and the less heavily planted parking is the employee.
There'll be a combination. The employees will come in either as we're looking at this one, the door south of the main entrance. Those will be primarily warehouse workers and office workers. And then there's a door up where that kind of, Caitlin, up around the corner there. Yep, that's where the driver entrance, truck drivers will enter in there, as well as some of the office folks.
Okay, but just at the main, the big piece with the Coca-Cola sign would be for somebody coming to visit the building, that would be.
Primarily a combination of employee and visitor parking, yes.
The visitor entrance, okay. And then there was a discussion about the metal panels and I think 2 colors, but there's the lighter metal panel color up at the top, the light gray, that's intended to be the same color as the paint that the other unchanged sides of the buildings get painted.
Correct.
And then there's the lighter metal panel below it. That's more of the same stuff, just in a darker color.
Correct.
And then the darker gray highlights at the entrance pieces. Is that the same metal panel, just with the square?
That'll
pattern?
be the higher end benchmark type flat panel with a smoother finish on it.
And then the red striping, and is there a red stripe at the roof line too? It's kind of hidden by the
Yes, there is.
dash line. So the heavy red stripe is also metal, and is this all in the same plane? The
Yes,
light gray and the red and the darker gray?
correct.
Okay.
A little bit of undulation, a little bit of relief, but not dramatic.
You don't have any details or product sort of photos, which we sometimes see for that kind of a panel to show if it's, like a heavy recessed reveal between the panels, or if they're tight joints, or how
The
prominent that
benchmark,
striping is
yeah,
gonna be?
Sure, the benchmark will be a tight joint. The rest of the panels that you see interlock, and therefore you won't see those seams. They're all hidden.
If I could interrupt Deborah for a second, Evans, typically you're required to do a facade review for a commercial building like this. We're within the site plan review and we're talking about the building lot, but I expect, are you planning to come back and do that sort of facade review at some point? That you just wanted to show us the building while we're doing the site plan review, or or has that not been clarified?
Well, tell me what information you would like for a facade review that you don't feel we're giving you now.
Well, we don't know what these materials are. We don't know how, it would just be some more information about how this is constructed and how that's attached, and a little more enlargement of some of these long elevations so that we get a better sense of where things are and where the doors are. And I mean, we can sort of see, but I think you're aware from some of the previous visits that we would just talk about the building facade in more detail, and color samples and ideas of that you can actually paint the rest of the building to match that color. And again, the scale of these is so huge that east side is just a long gray box, but I know it moves in and out and in and out several times. And I wouldn't want to use that scale and detail drawing to call it a facade review. So I guess be my preference that you come back at another time, when we would really just look at the architecture. And you wouldn't need, the whole team, but we could have the architect and you could take us through it and answer some of these questions that Deborah's been asking, sort of what's that red band? Does it stick? How far does it stick out? What's the coping on the top of the building? How are we doing some of these things?
Okay.
I don't feel like it's the place to do it right now.
Okay.
So
So we can do that. I mean, we are scheduled to go back before the planning board at the beginning of November. But when is the next meeting of the design review board?
I would have to look. It's
November 7th.
November 7th.
November 7th. So I think
that's not something that needs to be done as far as the planning board is concerned. It's when you go in for your building permit, he goes, did you get the building reviewed?
Okay. So then I would say
got some flexibility there, and we'll be sending the planning board a memo. We're not going to approve the building design in any way at this time.
Okay. So it sounds to me like, we'll be back in front of the planning board for site plan review on, I think it's November 1. So if you can prepare the memo, I don't know if that's sufficient time for you to prepare the memo between now and November 1 so that they can have it at the time we go back in front of them.
Yes, they'll have it. So
the facade review, if you're telling me that can be done after we're in front of the planning board, then we will definitely accommodate what you would like us to do in that regard, and come back at some point in November.
Yeah, because typically we would just, maybe they can show other images of some of these finishes and or samples, whichever way you want to go. But I think if you
we as I mentioned before, we need to come back in front before you anyway for the sign permits.
Yep.
Because these exceed the allowable size.
Yeah. If you want to put the two together, you could do apply for the signs and then also the building, and we could go through the building and then we could do the signs at the same review session.
Okay.
If you know enough about what they are and where they are.
Right.
Yeah, Mark, if I may, have a comment and a question.
Sure. Sure. Then Deborah, I'll come back to you. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Well, wait, is Deborah done?
No, I'm done. That's fine.
Okay. So for Evans, in this little discussion we're having now about facade review, that seems to work well. They're two separate issues, but we can do them the same night. because signs are attached to building components that we're very interested in for the facade review. So cut sheets and specs on the types of panels and the questions that Deborah was asking. Also, that canopy that I think we saw in one of the renderings that leans out over that front door, dimensions on that, how it's designed, how far it goes out, how it's supported, how it's drained, things like that. Yeah, that because from this distance, there appear to be some potential diagonals there that sometimes you see in those canopies. We'd like to see that. And then a quick question on this rendering. As you look at the main Coca-Cola sign, and then you move your eyes to the left to that corner where those tall arborvitaes are, it appears the building, it's like a giant parapet. Where's the roof level there?
The roof level does step down as you come around the corner for, I want to say about 50 feet before it then rises back up to its normal level.
All right, thanks. That makes sense. So that's building question. And if we could, I do have a question on the rendered site plan, please. Something I spotted when you were talking with the other board members. Yeah, so up on the top right, if you don't mind me annotating, this right here, what does that indicate? Because it's an odd shape for that location, given there are all those truck parking spaces to the right of it.
That's an old existing concrete. We're not proposing, it's in good shape. We weren't proposing to remove it. I believe there was a truck fueling facility at one time back in that area.
Okay.
And so we are replacing the asphalt pavement around it, which is about 20 years old. But that's just existing concrete to remain.
Oh, but it's flush.
Yep.
Oh, excellent. I thought I was afraid it was a curb or something.
No.
But I'm sure the drivers would have figured that out. All right, thank you. That's all for now.
Okay. Well, I think the site lighting is an improvement. Is there any reason you're not extending the landscaped work further south into that other parking as you get closer to the potential second retention area?
So this is an existing parking area that is just being restriped. So this, the northern employee area, this is all, the building here is being demolished and this is all kind of being reworked up in this area. So we're improving it with proposed landscaping, and then this parking lot is just existing to remain, just to be restriped.
But that entire facade is being upgraded along that edge, correct? I mean, the new
Yes.
design extends all the way down to that corner. It seems like, well, it would be nice to upgrade more of that planting scheme if you can, just to create a more continuous, attractive elevation, which you're putting a lot of work into the building, but not much work into the area in front of it along there. Whereas, and then you're going very heavily into the little office worker entrance, basically the entrances, the employee entrances and the public entrance. So it seems a little asymmetric to me. I would agree that Kendrick Street and Third Ave corner, this is the time to, you're doing all this work around there. I realize there's topographic issues, which is why those big blocks are there in the first place. But this is the chance to clean that up. And so I would wonder if you couldn't extend it around the corner a little bit and up Third Ave, where you have a wider planting space available, to do just a little bit more landscaping along there to help improve that corner. Because Third Avenue has not been a well-maintained side of this site. So, and your images show that with fences and the view of that is the back end of 40-foot trailers. So I would have loved to have seen some trees really added all along the length of that. But it appears there's probably not space for them. So short of that, I think, I'd like Susan's ideas, sort of upgrading the landscaping to something that's doesn't have to be maintained that much, because this may be a new regime for this site, but historically it's not been maintained really at all. And So I would, if you're gonna put in a nice, putting in new fencing that's much higher quality. I think I'd like to see the corner at Third Avenue planted a little bit more extensively. Not necessarily to the degree you're doing the public parking lot in the northwest corner, but maybe a little bit more along the lines of the B Street, Third Avenue corner, where you've got a little bit more of an amenity going there. And then maybe stretch that up a little bit closer to the truck entrance, because that might help as far as just providing a foreground in front of all the back end of all these trailers. The neighbors across the street, which you can see in a light gray, are well landscaped. They're well maintained buildings. It'd be nice if that street environment could be upgraded a little bit while we're working on this. So that would be, that's one of the comments that I'm gonna ask the planning board to consider what can be done there. I don't think can go as far. You're not really trying to change much of the paving back there other than repaving it. So, but whether that planting bed along Third Ave could even be widened enough to support a tree every 30 feet or something, that would be a big improvement for that site and for the general environment in there. The existing lightings that you're going to leave there is, I would love to see that have the whole site be upgraded to that other approach, but that's, I understand if there's going to be limits to how far you're going to want to go on some of those things. And then I'm glad we had the building discussion, because I think we were just kind of wandering too far into something that has a separate review for it. So I look forward to you coming back and going through the building in a little more detail. So if the board has any other questions or comments?
There is another topic that I would invite comments on if you're inclined.
Okay.
To give,
Absolutely.
which is if we can put up the slide that shows the rendering from the 128 side. So these are the two signs that we're going to be coming back for
Okay.
sign permits, and the Coca-Cola sign is the same size as the existing. Well, team member can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but my understanding is that's the same size as the existing, but it's obviously substantially larger than what's allowed as of right, even for a sign that's facing 128. And then there's the sort of lighthouse logo, which would also be a sign. And so if you were inclined, we wanted to solicit your sort of informal input on that before we formally come back for the sign permits.
Sure. Do you have an idea of how big it is, the square footage?
Sure, the main entry sign is around 200 square feet. The lighthouse, depending on how you measure it, but using your method, is probably close to 250 square feet.
Wow.
The existing sign, that large Coke sign, is about 450 feet.
Yeah, I know it's a big one. So
With another sign over the main entry of 50. So our proposal aggregates to about 100 square feet less than what's currently on the building.
okay. Well, part of it is how well it sits in there. Again, facing 128, you can apply for a special permit. So Evans, I would say that the first thing is that apply for the special permit so that we can look at this. If you want to come before us, it would be an informal review, which we're going to do now. But I think.
I understand we're going to need special permit.
Okay.
I guess what I was soliciting is you're looking at it and thinking, yeah, we might entertain that, or that, no, that looks way too big, or whatever.
I think the lighthouse, if it was a little smaller, would be more easily categorized as a graphic element, which are easier similar to what we saw on Roche Brothers, where they had that painted R on the end. So it's less of a sign than sort of an architectural graphic element. The Coca-Cola, to me, it fits the facade well. I'm not sure that wouldn't work a little bit smaller, but I would certainly entertain it at this point. I'd let the other board members weigh in. Bob, do you have any thoughts? Bob?
Yes, the Coca-Cola sign, I'd like to see a drawing of it much closer to get an idea of the negative space around it. The script L and the cola looks real close to that top right corner, but it may not be. That's the kind of level I'd like to look at. So not necessarily the size itself, but the size within that big, gray panel, I think is important to note. So dimensions, when you're ready to show them, would be helpful. The lighthouse, again, just it's too far away in this rendering. But one first reaction is that, and I haven't seen the graphic up close, but it just appears that it's floating, that there's nothing under it, no graphic line or even a suggestion of a something for it to sit on. So that would be an early comment, but I really need to see these much more closer.
Deborah?
Just for the scale of those pieces, I think given the size of the building, I think they're fine. I don't object to the size of them.
Susan, any?
I have a question. What is this sort of black area under the Coca-Cola? What is that?
That appears to be a bit of a rendered.
And I think that might actually be spandrel glass if you look at the elevation.
Yeah, it could be. And it certainly would work that way because that would be a two-story space. So that's certainly something we may be considering.
What is it?
It's spandrel glass, yeah, it's a two-story space there. There you go. That's
If you look at
perfect.
the drawing, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, the rendering doesn't correctly bring it
Okay.
out.
Oh, this, now we can kind of see it in context with the negative space around it. It might be just a hair big, just, it's, as Bob said, it's pushing right up to the edge on the upper right corner.
Okay.
Maybe we want to kind of get it settled in into that space just a little bit more comfortably. But other than that, I think, you can come close to that size and we'll certainly consider it. And the lighthouse seems just a bit large to me for what an element that it is. I don't equate Coke with a lighthouse. Is this something I missed?
It's the Coke Northeast branding.
Okay. Okay, so does that give you a little bit to work with, Evans?
No, absolutely. That's very helpful. I appreciate those comments.
Okay. If there's nothing else, we will prepare a memo for the planning board. Again, you said November 1st, so make sure that they get it before that.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for
Thank you
coming
all.
in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Kristen, we didn't make it easy for you. The site plan reviews are tough, but
Breaking her in.
I'll get you a copy of my memo, which will be focused on the stuff that we thought was important, or that I thought was important.
Mark, if you don't mind, I have a suggestion for that memo. And correct me if I'm wrong, they did say those big concrete blocks are going away at the corner, correct?
Yeah.
I have my suspicions. I was looking at Google Earth. I wonder if that's where they pile snow. And they use that as a backstop to contain it before it goes down into Kendrick Street. I don't know, maybe it's a conspiracy theory, but that's what it looked like on the Google Earth image. But if they're going to put grass in there, they should definitely get rid of them. And you can see them from Kendrick Street.
Oh, that corner's a mess.
Yeah,
and I
I think
think
they should just offer the town a whole bunch of trees and call it a day.
I know that just.
Yeah,
I think Third Ave could be improved by
Yeah.
just a row of. They don't have to be closely spaced so you can't see the trucks, but put some street trees along there and decorate it up. So and we made that point, I think so.
yeah. I
Include that.
agree with your comments on that.
So, so we don't have any minutes. Rana will be finishing up the last ones that she worked on. And again, we welcome Kristen.
And I will do the moment the memo for Kendrick Street.
Yeah, and we can, if you want any questions, just call, you can add to it, but the
I
key to
actually-
the planning board is to, and I talked with you about it, and you were very good about detailing out, this is what we talked about.
Yep.
Also need to at some point say, and we thought all of those were fine, or
Yeah.
we approved of all, because then the two things that they do is if they don't see something, they start asking, well, did they talk about this? Do we need to send you back? And the second thing is if we talk about something, they say, well, I can't tell if they liked it or not. So I've gotten to be fairly definite on saying, this is okay, this is okay, this is okay.
All right. Thank you, Elise. I actually did rewatch the video, which is a great way to spend time, people, if you're really looking to spend an afternoon watching yourself.
Bad
But
enough learning it.
it actually really helps because now I have a very accurate memo of this was the issue, this was their response. So
Yeah.
that did help. Thank you.
Okay, and then the last thing is regarding the committee. Len isn't here, but Steve, I sent you an email, but Steve resigned. So I'm really going to miss him because his knowledge of signage and he's also had a good design eye. So after all his years of doing that work, so it's sad to see him go, but I believe he was on the study committee that wrote these original regulations. And then he also served on the committee forever. He was the chair when I started. And then I took over in the early 2000s, like around 2009 or 10. But he had been doing it for years. So, and he's brought the committee along with and helped me sort of go from when I started, the record was a stenographer's notepad where they wrote the name of the applicant and approved or denied. And that was it. And they'd walk in and all be sitting in a room and you go, who's first? And they'd look at each other and the savvy ones would charge the desk and the rest of them would have to wait. So we had a first thing we did was a sign-up sheet. And then we advanced to the agenda and posting it online and all that. So it's come along. He saw a lot of change and I'm really gonna miss him. I enjoyed serving with him. And Chad Riley got a new job in New York City. So he still lives in Needham and still can serve on the board and offered to have, if we're short of a quorum or we need him for something, he said, check in and maybe he can do a Zoom attendance. But we agreed he'd take sort of a 3-month sabbatical and then we'd evaluate at the end on whether that can work or not. Or whether he should resign and we'll get another member, but I don't want the board out trying to find 2 people at once. So I'd like to see if we can get a replacement for Steve. And then we can go to the next steps and see with Chad because again, his plans are unclear at this time but he's an empty nester. So he took this job and he's spending 3 or 4 days in New York and then the rest of the time here. But there's a transition day, which is, he said is likely is going to be Monday. So he quite often might be on the road Monday evening when we would need him. So, and I'll miss him too, because I don't expect him to be, personally don't see how it's going to work for him to come back. But if he wants to continue, we can figure out a way, that would be great. But he was always the best spoken of us, I thought, and always able to talk with an applicant in a way that was respectful, even when the stuff they were showing us was not. And so
Well said.
And I always appreciated that out of him. And I actually relied on him for that. When I couldn't figure out this is really stupid.
Like that New England
Chad, I
supply.
said, Chad, what is this? Yeah, can you? And he
Like
could-
the New England supply sign tonight?
Yeah. So, yeah,
Still recording.
that's okay.
I
So-
stand by my words.
So with that update, I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I second.
All right, and the vote, Bob,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Deborah,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Welcome,
Thank
Kristen.
you.
So Bob, we should head to the James for beer.